So is Jacob's life smooth sailing for the rest of Genesis? Absolutely not. In fact, for the final third of Genesis, you have the story of Jacob's sons, aka the story of Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Now, before I get into this analysis, something to be said about that coat. It wasn't technicolored. If you look at the Hebrew word for the description of the coat that Jacob gives Joseph, is that it is a coat with sleeves. Ooh, what a gift. Well, that was significant at the time because if you have extra fabric to cover your arms, it means you have money. So it was an expensive coat, and Jacob gives it to Joseph because, again, firstborn son of him and Rachel. Oh, by the way, Rachel died sometime after the Jacob-Esau reunion. We didn't cover that. Another translation of the coat of many colors is that it's a coat with stripes or with patchwork, which is maybe where they get that title, Technicolor Dreamcoat. But I like to think of it as the coat with sleeves because that really messes with Andrew Lloyd Webber's final song in that musical. Coat with sleeves. If you really want a summary of the Joseph story, you can watch Joseph, King of Dreams, which has the voice talent of Ben Affleck, or that Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, which is just horrendous.
Joseph's coat annoyed his brothers.
Two stories that you won't find in either of those accounts is the rape of Dinah. Yeah, that was the sister, remember? They had a sister. The brothers seek revenge on the rapist by going to the town and converting them so that they would all circumcise themselves. And while they were in agony recovering from the pain, two of the brothers slaughtered them. The Bible! The other story is a story of Judah marrying Tamar. It seems to be a random wedding story, but don't forget, it's the descendants of Judah that we're going to get people like King David and King Solomon and, of course, Jesus. So as we're looking at the firstborns of these tribes, that's probably why they have this account of the Judah-Tamar wedding. Why does the story of Joseph make up the final third of Genesis, making it the longest story of any figure in Genesis? For two good reasons. One, by the end of Genesis, all of God's promises, except the one about the land, has been fulfilled. And you really see this in the story of Joseph, where the son becomes royal, and God is protecting the people from the famine. Jacob, of course, has many descendants, and then those boys are going to have many descendants, and God told Abraham, you will be the father of many. So we really see evidence of the fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant through the story of Joseph. But there's one better reason why Joseph makes up such a huge chunk of Genesis, and that has to do with the amount of typology that is present when it comes to Joseph and Jesus. How much typology? Enough typology that we have to supersize it. Typology. Supersized. Yeah. In no particular order, both Joseph and Jesus have miraculous births. Joseph is born of a barren woman. Jesus was born of a virgin. The greatness of both of these men are prophesied. Joseph has two dreams about his brothers bowing down to him. Jesus, of course, has all the Old Testament prophets prophesying him. Joseph and Jesus are hated by their brothers. Both Joseph and Jesus are betrayed over pieces of silver. Both Joseph and Jesus end up in Egypt. Joseph, of course, is sold to the Ishmaelites who take Jesus to Potiphar in Egypt and eventually to Pharaoh himself. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus' father, Joseph, takes his family to Egypt to escape the Jewish Bibbit massacre by King Herod the Great. Oh yeah, I forgot about that Joseph, right? Jesus' father is Joseph. And how does the New Testament Joseph learn about Jesus and that he should escape to Egypt? Through dreams. So you have to assume that through Jesus' father, Joseph, Matthew is trying to draw a connection to the Genesis Joseph in that both of these men have dreams that result in them taking their families to Egypt. both Joseph and Jesus lose their robe. Of course, Joseph's coat is taken by his enemies, and Jesus' coat is taken by the Romans. Joseph is a shepherd in Genesis. Jesus is described as being the good shepherd of his flock. Speaking of which, are you picking up on how God likes shepherds? Abel was a shepherd, God favored him. Joseph is a shepherd, God favors him. King David is going to be a shepherd. And of course, Jesus is like a shepherd. God likes shepherds. Both Joseph and Jesus remain obedient to the Father. Of course, Joseph obeys his biological father, that is Jacob. But after Joseph is sold into slavery, Joseph has obedience to Potiphar. Joseph has obedience to Pharaoh. And Joseph maintains his obedience to God, especially when he's in jail, undergoing his version of an agony in the garden. No need to talk about Jesus' obedience to his father, right? They both have a coming back from the dead story. You all know Jesus is, but in the case of Joseph, Joseph's brothers, including his father, believed that Joseph was dead. And obviously at the end of Genesis, after a period of not being able to recognize their brother, they see that he very much is alive. In the Gospels, when Jesus comes back from the dead, nobody can recognize him either. Both Jesus and Joseph are given authority over all of the world. Now, in the case of Joseph, Egypt might as well have been considered the capital of their world. And when Joseph is placed next in charge to Pharaoh, that is him having authority over essentially all of the world. And as he prepares for the famine and then distributes bread to those that need food, Joseph is feeding the world and Joseph is saving the world, right? But notice that Joseph is not number one, right? Pharaoh's number one. In Egyptian culture, they believed the Pharaoh was God. You can make the case that Joseph is second to God or son of God. Both Joseph and Jesus are tempted by an evil one. Jesus, of course, is tempted by the devil. Joseph is tempted by Potiphar's wife. But they don't give in out of obedience and respect to their masters. The masters. Tradition says that Jesus began his public ministry at the age of 30. In Genesis chapter 41, verse 46, it says that Joseph was 30 years old when he began working for the Pharaoh, aka his public ministry. In the Genesis account, Joseph is put into prison with two criminals at his side. And one criminal believes in Joseph and the other criminal does not. Well, what do you think happens to the criminal who believes in Joseph? He's the one that ultimately survives prison, and the one who doubts Joseph is the one who ends up dead. Similar to Jesus' crucifixion scene, that on Jesus' right hand, that man will be with Jesus in heaven. He will have life. The person at Jesus' left hand, not so much. And of course, both stories end in forgiveness. Jesus, when he's on the cross, forgives, and obviously his death then leads to forgiveness of sin. Joseph forgives his brothers of the sin, the wrong they did to him. The Joseph story is a story of forgiveness. So is it possible that the Joseph story makes up the final third of Genesis because of its typological connections to Christ? Who knows? The Jesus-Joseph connection is huge, but there's one that's going to be bigger, and that's going to be Moses and Jesus. Coming up next. I wore my coat with really long sleeves.